She laughed as if daring me, her eyes sharp and playful. I hope you're ready, because I won't be gentle. I thought she was just teasing, but the way her hand lingered on my arm told me this wasn't just a game. I still remember the first time she caught me off guard. It was late afternoon in the office, the kind of hour where the hum of computers and the distant ringing of phones had dulled into a background haze. I was bent over my desk, trying to get a stubborn report balanced, when she walked by with that steady, confident stride I had already come to recognize. There was something about the way she carried herself, graceful, composed, but with a spark in her eyes that told you she could turn sharp in a heartbeat. She leaned over my shoulder, scanning the numbers I had been staring at for too long. I felt the warmth of her presence before I heard her voice, low but edged with mischief. I hope you're ready. She laughed softly. Because I won't be gentle. At first, I didn't even know how to respond. My throat tightened, and all I could do was glance up at her, meeting eyes that shimmered with a challenge I hadn't expected. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them, the playful curve of her lips, the deliberate confidence in her tone. She wasn't mocking me, she was daring me. Her hand brushed my arm as she pointed at a line on the page, a touch so light it could have been accidental, but it didn't feel accidental. My skin warmed under her fingertips, and for a moment I forgot about the report entirely. She stood close enough that I caught the faint trace of her perfume, something elegant and subtle, the kind of scent that stayed in your memory long after she had walked away. You're too cautious here, she continued, tapping the page gently, her finger trailing over the numbers as if she were guiding me through them. If you want this to hold up, you'll need to push harder. Don't second-guess yourself. Her words carried more weight than just work advice. I could feel it in the way she lingered beside me, her voice firm yet encouraging. She was testing me, not only in my work but in how I would stand beside her. There was something magnetic about her confidence, the way she never shrank from intensity. And yet, beneath that strength, I thought I glimpsed something softer, a flicker of curiosity, as though she wanted to see if I could rise to meet her. I nodded, forcing myself to refocus on the report, though my thoughts were anything but clear. All right, I managed to say. Show me how you do it. That earned me another laugh, deeper this time, rich and warm. She tilted her head, studying me, her eyes narrowing with amusement. Careful, she teased. You might regret asking that. But the smile that followed softened her words, leaving me caught between unease and anticipation. I didn't know what exactly I had just stepped into, but one thing was certain: this woman wasn't just another colleague. She was a storm wrapped in elegance, and she had just decided to see if I could keep pace with her. The days that followed made one thing clear: she enjoyed keeping me on my toes. What began as a single teasing remark soon became a rhythm between us, a dance of words and subtle glances that carried more weight than either of us admitted aloud. It started during meetings. She had this way of locking eyes with me when I spoke, tilting her head slightly, as though silently daring me to stand taller, speak louder, believe in what I was saying. And when I stumbled, when I second-guessed myself, her smirk would appear, playful, not cruel, but sharp enough to remind me that she noticed. One afternoon, we were working side by side on a client proposal. The office was busy, the low murmur of colleagues filling the space, yet it felt as though a quiet bubble had formed around us. She stood close as we reviewed the slides, her arm brushing mine every now and then, each touch as deliberate as it was casual. You're too neat with your words, she said, her eyes scanning the screen. Too careful. Say it like you mean it. I glanced at her, feeling the pull of her presence, the faint scent of her perfume settling over me like a spell. I don't want to overdo it, I replied, my voice quieter than I intended. Her laugh came again, soft but edged with that familiar daring tone. Overdo it? You couldn't, even if you tried. I felt my chest tighten at her confidence, at the way her gaze lingered on me just a second too long before flicking back to the screen. She leaned in closer, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder as she corrected a phrase, her touch firm but not unkind. It was instructional, yet it left a trail of warmth beneath my shirt that had nothing to do with words on a page. And so it went, this back and forth, her challenges matched with my stubborn attempts to keep pace. She teased me about my rookie hesitations, but her eyes softened when she saw me rise to the occasion. Beneath the sharp edges of her wit, there was encouragement, almost pride, though she would never state it outright. I started looking forward to it. To the way she'd lean against my desk, her arms folded as though she had all the time in the world, watching me with that patient smile. To the way her laughter would fill the office when I finally managed a clever comeback. To the rare moments when her confidence slipped just enough for me to catch a glimmer of something unspoken behind her eyes. It was a game, but it wasn't. The rivalry brought us closer, weaving an invisible thread of tension between us. Every challenge, every brush of her hand, every shared laugh was pulling me deeper. And though she kept reminding me she wouldn't be gentle, I was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, I didn't want her to be. It was a Wednesday evening, long after most of the office had emptied. The fluorescent lights above hummed softly, casting a muted glow across the desks. Papers were stacked neatly, computers powered down, but she remained at her corner, hunched slightly over a mug of coffee gone cold. I hadn't planned to stay, but something about the sight of her, usually so composed, so steady, caught me off guard. She didn't notice me at first. Her eyes were fixed on the faint ripple of liquid in her cup, her fingers tracing the rim in slow, absent circles. For once, there was no teasing smirk, no daring glance. Just a quiet stillness that carried a weight I couldn't ignore. I cleared my throat gently as I approached, not wanting to intrude but unable to walk away. "Still working?" I asked. My voice sounded too loud in the empty room. She looked up, startled for a moment, then softened when she saw me. "Something like that," she murmured, her smile faint but tired. "Mostly just thinking." I hesitated before sliding into the chair across from her. The air between us felt different tonight, stripped of the playful rivalry that usually defined us. Instead, there was a fragile openness, like a door left slightly ajar. After a pause, she spoke again, her voice lower, more deliberate. "You know, everyone assumes I've got it all figured out. That confidence means certainty. But the truth?" She let out a small, humorless laugh. "I've stumbled more times than I'd ever admit in a meeting. And I've carried those stumbles with me longer than I should have." Her fingers drummed lightly on the ceramic mug, and I found myself watching the small movement, the way her knuckles tensed and released. She wasn't performing now. She wasn't challenging me. She was showing me the pieces she usually kept tucked away. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, wanting her to know I was listening. "No one gets this far without stumbling," I said quietly. "The fact that you're still here, that says more than the stumbles ever could." Her eyes lifted to meet mine, and for a moment the world outside that dimly lit office didn't exist. There was something in her gaze, relief, maybe, or gratitude, that made my chest tighten. The confident, untouchable colleague I thought I knew had edges I hadn't seen before, softer lines that made her even more compelling. She smiled then, small but real, and it carried none of the playful sharpness I had grown used to. It was gentler, tinged with vulnerability. "You're kind," she whispered, almost as if she hadn't meant for me to hear it. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was steady, grounding. Her hand shifted slightly on the table, close enough that if I moved just an inch, my fingers would brush hers. I didn't. Not yet. But the space between us felt charged, filled with an understanding that had nothing to do with reports or rivalry. For the first time, I realized she wasn't just challenging me to rise to her level. She was letting me see the woman beneath the armor, and trusting me to hold that truth with care. The next time we stayed late, the atmosphere was different. The playful rivalry that had colored our earlier evenings lingered in the air, but beneath it was something heavier, unspoken, waiting. The office was quiet, only the low buzz of the lights overhead, and the faint hum of a printer still running somewhere in the distance. We sat at the same table, papers spread between us. She was leaning close, her hair falling slightly over her shoulder, the faint glow from her laptop tracing the outline of her face. I caught myself watching her more than the work in front of me, the way her brow furrowed when she concentrated, the soft press of her lips when she was about to make a point. She noticed. She always noticed. Without lifting her eyes from the page, she smirked. "You're distracted." My heart stumbled in my chest. "Maybe," I admitted, my voice lower than I intended. That earned me a glance, sharp at first, then softening. Her eyes lingered on me a beat longer than necessary, and something in the air shifted. She set her pen down, fingers brushing mine as she did, and the touch, so small, so fleeting, sent a rush of heat to my skin. Neither of us pulled away. For a moment, it felt as if time had slowed, stretching the silence between us into something more intimate, more fragile. She leaned back slightly, folding her arms as if to create distance, but her gaze stayed locked with mine. "You know this isn't simple," she said quietly. The words carried more weight than just work. "I know," I replied. My throat felt dry, but I forced the words out. "But I don't think anything worth having ever is." Her lips parted, as though she might answer, but no words came. Instead, she reached for the folder in front of us. Our hands collided, fingers brushing, palms almost pressing together. It should have been nothing. Just an accident. Yet neither of us moved right away. The contact lingered, light but charged, the kind of touch that meant far more than it showed. I felt the warmth of her skin seep into mine, and with it came the silent question hanging between us: would either of us be brave enough to close the space completely? But she drew back, her hand slipping away, leaving a cool emptiness in its place. She laughed softly, but it wasn't the confident laugh I was used to. It was quieter, almost fragile. "Careful," she whispered. "We might both regret it if we forget where we are." Her words were cautious, but her eyes betrayed her. They lingered on me, searching, as if waiting for something she couldn't bring herself to ask. I wanted to reach for her then, to bridge the space between us, but I stayed still. Not out of fear, but out of respect. She wasn't just a colleague, not just a game or a challenge. She was someone worth waiting for, even if the hesitation burned inside me. And so, the silence stretched again, heavy with everything we hadn't said yet, and I knew the rivalry had shifted into something far more dangerous, something far more precious. It happened on a Friday evening, after an especially long week. The office was quiet again, the glow of city lights spilling in through the tall windows, reflecting faintly on the polished floor. She was gathering her things, but her movements were slower than usual, as if she were lost in thought. I lingered too, pretending to shuffle papers I had already finished, unwilling to let the night close without at least one more moment with her. When she finally noticed me still at my desk, her brows lifted slightly, though her eyes softened. "You're still here?" she asked, her tone more curious than stern. "Looks like you are too," I countered gently, and that earned me a small smile. Not the teasing kind I was used to, but something quieter, almost tired. She sat down again, setting her bag aside. "Do you ever get tired of holding it all together?" she asked suddenly. The question was so unexpected that I froze. She wasn't looking at me now, her gaze was fixed on the darkening skyline outside. "People think strength is effortless, but it's not. Some days it feels like wearing armor that gets heavier the longer you keep it on." There it was, her guard, slipping. My chest tightened at the vulnerability in her voice. I leaned closer, resting my forearms on the desk. "You don't always have to be strong," I said softly. "At least not with me." That made her turn, her eyes searching mine. For a moment neither of us spoke. The air between us felt fragile, like the first snowfall that silences the world. Slowly, she exhaled, and with it some of the tension she carried seemed to leave her shoulders. Her hand moved, almost absent-mindedly, until her fingers brushed against my wrist. It was a light touch, tentative, as though she was testing whether I would pull away. I didn't. Instead, I let the warmth of her hand rest there, grounding me in the simple reality of her closeness. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But having you here these late nights, It helps more than I expected. You make it easier to breathe. Those words hit me deeper than I could explain. The woman who always seemed untouchable, who carried herself with unwavering confidence, was telling me she found comfort in my presence. I turned my wrist slightly so that our palms touched, the contact still gentle but more deliberate now. Then I'll stay, I said, my voice steady. As long as you need. Her laugh this time was different, soft, warm, touched with something tender. She shook her head slightly, as though amused by her own openness. You have no idea what you're signing up for, she whispered, though her fingers never left mine. And in that moment, the teasing rival I had first known faded into the background, replaced by the woman in front of me, strong, yes, but also human, vulnerable, and quietly reaching for connection. For the first time, I felt her letting me in, not as a colleague, not as a challenger, but as someone she trusted. And I knew I would protect that trust with everything I had. The following week, another late night found us side by side again. But this time, the air felt different, less like colleagues finishing a project, more like two people who had quietly crossed an invisible line. The unspoken closeness between us had grown heavier, more undeniable. We worked in near silence, our laptops humming, the only light coming from the warm desk lamp that cast a golden glow over her features. Every so often, I'd glance up, catching the way she pushed a strand of hair behind her ear or pressed her lips together when she was thinking. Each small movement tugged at me more than I cared to admit. At some point, she leaned closer to read a note I had written. Her shoulder brushed against mine, the faintest pressure, yet it felt like a spark had leapt between us. Neither of us moved away. Her presence settled into me, steady, grounding, intoxicating all at once. You're quiet tonight, she said softly, not looking at me. Her voice was calm, but her tone carried a question. I swallowed, searching for words. Sometimes silence says more. That made her pause. She turned her head slightly, her eyes catching mine in the soft light. There was no teasing in them now, no playful challenge. Just openness, searching, waiting. For a long moment, we simply held each other's gaze. My heart beat faster, but I didn't break away. I wanted her to see me, to know I wasn't afraid of whatever this was between us. Her hand shifted on the desk, fingers brushing the edge of my notebook. It was such a small gesture, but the way she let her hand linger there, so close to mine, felt like a question. I moved my hand just enough that my fingers grazed hers. She didn't pull back. Instead, her fingertips curled lightly, touching mine in the gentlest way, like a secret meant only for us. The silence deepened, no longer empty but full, charged with everything we weren't saying. The hum of the office faded, the ticking clock on the wall blurred into the background. All I felt was the warmth of her touch and the steady pull of her presence. She exhaled softly, and I felt it more than I heard it. Her knee brushed mine beneath the table, an accidental touch that neither of us corrected. The simple press of fabric against fabric anchored us, quiet proof that neither of us wanted distance anymore. I wanted to speak, to confess what was building in my chest, but the words felt too fragile, too clumsy for the moment. And perhaps they weren't needed. Because in her eyes, in the way she leaned just slightly toward me, I already saw the truth. We didn't need declarations. We didn't need to break the silence. The closeness between us was the confession, and in that golden-lit office, with her fingers resting lightly against mine, I realized I didn't need anything more. For the first time, I felt the quiet certainty that she knew it too. The night it finally happened wasn't marked by anything extraordinary, no deadline looming, no pressing work to finish. We were simply there, together, in the quiet after most of the world had gone home. The office lights above were dimmed, leaving only the glow from the city streaming through the windows. The hum of traffic below was distant, softened by glass. She closed her laptop with a soft click, stretching her arms as though shaking off the weight of another long day. That's enough work for tonight, she said, her voice tired but gentle. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, Stay a moment longer? I didn't hesitate. We sat together by the wide window, the skyline sprawling before us. She leaned back in her chair, her posture less guarded than I had ever seen it, her head tilted slightly toward me. I could feel her presence, warm and grounding, as if the space between us had become something shared rather than divided. Her eyes followed the lights outside, but her voice was softer, almost vulnerable. "I never expected this," she said. "You. Us. It's been surprising." I turned to her, searching for the right words. Surprising doesn't always mean bad. That made her smile, faint but real, the kind of smile that reached her eyes. "No," she admitted. "Not bad at all. Just different. And different scares me." I let the silence linger, not rushing her. Then, carefully, I reached out. My hand found hers where it rested on the arm of the chair. At first, she didn't react. But then her fingers shifted, curling lightly around mine, holding on as though she had been waiting for me to make that small, steady gesture. She turned toward me fully now, her eyes glistening in the low light. "You've been patient," she whispered. "More patient than I deserve." I shook my head. "You're worth the wait." Her breath caught, so subtle, I might have missed it if I hadn't been so attuned to every detail of her. Then she leaned closer, closing the space that had hung between us for so long. She slipped her arms around me, her cheek resting against my chest. The embrace was firm yet tender, as though she was finally letting herself lean without fear of falling. I wrapped my arms around her carefully, holding her in that quiet moment, feeling the steady beat of her heart against me. It was a sound I could have listened to forever. After a while, she pulled back just slightly, just enough for her eyes to meet mine again. A playful spark returned, softened now by warmth. "I wasn't gentle with you," she teased quietly, echoing her first words to me. I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No," I said, "but I don't think I ever wanted you to be." Her laugh was soft, almost a sigh of relief, and she leaned into me again, as though the walls she'd built no longer needed to stand. In that embrace, with the city glowing beyond us and her hand resting firmly in mine, I knew the rivalry, the hesitation, the silent confessions, all of it had led us here. Not to a game, not to a challenge, but to something real. Something gentle, after all,